Welcome to the review of the All In Podcast, episode number 180. I'm Dom, the Chief Mad Scientist at JoyForge Labs. So OpenAI has been in the news again for being naughty again. This time, using Scarlett Johansson's voice. They say they didn't. They say they used some other actor, but they don't say who it is. And it's very fishy that they asked Scarlett Johansson 2 days before the launch of GPT 4.0 to have the rights to use her voice, to which she declined. They launched it anyway. Obviously, OpenAI is lying about this, and obviously they used her voice. Sam even tweeted saying her, just one thing, and it comes from this film where Joaquin Phoenix is talking to this AI assistant and falls in love with her, and of course that voice is done by Scarlett Johansson. So there's going to be a court case around this. It's again one of those fair use problems. My concern with this is just shows again how Sam Altman is being a politician. In yet another example of this bad behavior, employees who leave OpenAI are forced to sign these really restrictive documents that if they say anything negative about the company, they could lose all of their vested equity. What are they trying to protect and hide? What is going on inside this business? I think now if you look back, as Sachs mentions, to why Sam Altman was apparently let go by the board because he wasn't being candid in his answers. They didn't trust him. And I think I'm feeling the same way. I don't trust his answers. There's weird things going on, and he keeps coming out with some very opaque reasons. In the next segment, the besties talk about NVidia and just their unbelievable growth in revenue. Look at that chart. Look at how it just takes off, and it's continuing to go up quarter by quarter by quarter. These are billions being added every quarter to a very big billions number. NVIDIA is now the third most valuable company in the world. Just a few years ago, it was number 85. What a change in fortunes. Now, if you overlay NVIDIA's stock price with that of Cisco, who during the dot-com bubble was also the darling child, right? Did really, really well providing all this network equipment for all this booming internet economy. Only when the dot-com bubble burst, obviously Cisco fell off a cliff and has never recovered. Still a very valuable company, but never reached the same heights that it did during the bubble. Is this the same fate that NVIDIA is going to face? Well, arguments for that are saying, well, they are basically being supported by a few very large buyers, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Microsoft, buying huge amounts of these H100s right now to build up very, very powerful data centers for AI processing. And that may go away. And there will also be many, many competitors that come into the market that want to chip away at this incredible profit pool. It's very attractive to go after a market that is so big, that is dominated by one company. So will this be a death by 1,000 startups? Well, there is another opinion as well. The other opinion is that these H100s are just really, really complex machines to build. This is not something just like a piece of network equipment. The H100 is a really complex system. It's not just one piece of product. It's a really, really powerful combination of hardware and software that NVIDIA has a huge lead in. And because their R&D is going to continue to have a massive advantage. So it could be that no competitors really come into the space. But how will NVIDIA keep growing and maintain this massive market cap? Well, the only likely thing is potentially is going to compete with their biggest customers. They're going to build their own server farms and data centers with these H100s and sell compute online rather than just being a hardware player. There's no other real acquisitions they can make. They're not going to go into like buying TikTok or something like that. It's likely that they're going to go out and compete with Amazon and Google Cloud. Next up was a discussion about the US economy, which appears to be doing well. GDP is growing. All the normal metrics are pointing in the right direction. And yet, US consumers feel like the economy is in recession and that the stock market is down. But that's not true. So what is going on? Why is this disparity between the US economy and how US citizens are feeling about the economy? One argument given that is a little bit political was around inflation. That inflation is really what is causing people's consternation around prices. Things are getting more expensive on a daily basis, and inflation is destroying wealth. And if you look at it, really the inflation has been pretty bad in this last presidency. Now, to put this into some real numbers, check out the cost of McDonald's fries. It went from $1.79 in 2019, that's only 5 years ago, to $4.19. That is a huge increase in just 5 years. For the US economy, that is a massive thing. Of course, then the billionaires on the podcast had to opine about how expensive special fruits are becoming for them. And Chamath was talking about, man, these Driscoll's strawberries, they're now like $8 for 12 of them, and they're just not that good. And, $8. $8. But not to be outdone, J. says, hey, man, we should be buying some of these Japanese strawberries, and they're only $80 for 12. Well, there are certainly levels and then levels. So up next was a discussion on plastics, microplastics entering our bodies. They specifically spoke about these phthalates. Phthalates, I mean, if you can pronounce that, good luck. Phthalates, something like that. Tests have been done now on all sorts of foods found in US supermarkets and in fast food. And these have been found to have relatively high concentrations of these phthalates. And these phthalates, unfortunately, they're not on their own going to cause cancer unless you consume a huge amount of them, but they do affect the endocrine system. They're like an endocrine inhibitor, which means it affects your hormones, and hormones are incredibly important. It's a sensitive subject because they also had to study how much of these phthalates are staying in the body. And well, they cut up a lot of dogs' balls, all frozen ones, something like that. And so they found actually really high concentrations of these phthalates staying in the body. And then they did a study on humans. I don't know where they found these balls, but yeah, they found some frozen balls. Now, I get a bit annoyed. I think this is supposed to be the scientific corner, but they're being pretty unscientific here. They're going after, again, packaging of things like bananas and saying, well, do we need all these plastics? And thinking a little bit too simplistically. It's not just about ingesting plastics. The plastics come from everywhere. Our clothes are made from plastics. Our phone are made of plastics. Everything is made of these plastics. Do you remember the Romans? You know, those people? Yeah, they went from transporting water in these open aqueducts, which was already an improvement, to using pipes. And they used lead because it was malleable and they could make these round pipes. So you didn't have poo falling into your water all the time, a big improvement. Unfortunately, lead also caused problems because lead would leach into the water and then you'd have lead in your body. So today, we don't have lead and asbestos and all these other heavy metals in our systems. Why? Because we use plastics. Okay, so plastics are way better than heavy metals in our systems, but now we're starting to see some costs. Friedberg does mention a potential alternative, which is using some sort of biopolymers. So we're not using polymers generated from oil. That's kind of a synthetic polymer. There's potential for using sugars and other carbohydrates to be able to develop these same polymers. They're not as good today, but maybe they will be in future. That's what we should be focusing on. That's what the Science Corner really should have been about. And we've come to the end of this week's review. The worst comment, unfortunately, goes to you, Chamath, for your insistence that we should focus on foods when really these plastics are in everything. And it's overly simplistic just to say, let's take away the packaging. That's not going to have any effect. It oversimplifies a very complex problem. Friedberg's background this week is from a famous film, The Graduate. And I was wondering, what does this relate to on the docket? And then it occurred to me. This is about Sam Altman. Dustin Hoffman is like Sam Altman. He's being seduced, and he is going to find that this is going to be a very bad outcome for him. Fortunately for Chamath, he's also got the best comment of the week around how NVIDIA is likely to go and compete with its biggest customers. So I'm going to play out with that. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the next episode.
I think NVIDIA, this is to build on Sachs's point, is going to get pulled into competing directly with the hyperscalers. So if you were just selling chips, you probably wouldn't. But Sachs is right. Like these are these big, bulky, actual machines. Then all of a sudden you're like, well, why don't I just create my own physical plant and just stack these things and create racks and racks of these machines?
And go head to head with AWS instead of selling to them.
It's not a far stretch, especially because NVIDIA actually has the software interface that everybody uses, which is CUDA. So I think it's likely that NVIDIA goes on a full frontal assault against GCP and Amazon and Microsoft. That's going to really complicate the relationship that those folks have with each other. But I think it's inevitable because how do you defend? It's kind of the Apple problem. How do you defend an enormously large market cap? You're forced to go into businesses that are equally lucrative.